Welcome back to Naval Action and episode 43 of A Letter to the King. If you're new to the series, A Letter to the King is my attempt to keep you up to date with what's happening PvP-wise on the lovely Euro PvP1 server. If we just cast our mind back to where we were at the start of the week, the Swedes, now I missed this on my tally last week, the Swedes had snaffled up some Spanish land as they were out of the alliance. The Spanish had retaken Islamabad from the US, and the Brits and the French had been slapping each other's lugs around Castries and the Windward Islands and Trinidad, as well as the Brits had had a little go at the French down around Les Cays. And I think that was the main highlights from last week. Now the alliances are a bit more settled. I think everybody's back in their little alliance. The Americans are back in the alliance with the Brits. I'm pretty sure the Spanish are back in with the French. Should have checked that before I started this, but there you go. I'm pretty sure they are. If they aren't, they will be in the next 48 hours. So where was the biff and the bash this week? So, action began with the Danes having a little go at La Vega. I have to say, this is the first couple I'm reporting on. I don't really have much detail other than to tell you that it was defended by the pirates. The Brits, so as I mentioned last week, there's a Brit clan that's been, it's like a newish clan, and they've been running up hostility and doing lots of missions around here, and they've been getting a lot of sort of non-affiliated captains involved with them to give them all a bit of a chance. The Spanish probably love it because it means they're getting all the free loot from relatively uncontested port battles. However, this week we did have a bit of fun, and we managed to put together a how many was there of us? 22 man fleet. And we went into Merida on the north coast of the Yucatan there, and although the Spanish, it was a complement actually, it was an alliance complement, Spanish, Swedes, French and Danes relatively easily defended it. It was a great opportunity for a whole bunch of folks who were either returning to the game and hadn't played in the new port battle system, or were never been in. They were like little greenies, little virgins, not been into a port battle. And although it was an easy defence, it was a really good run out, and it also showed us that in this time zone, and we'll be talking about time zones a little bit later on, there might be enough, in the oceanic time zone for some action here. These guys certainly had plenty of folks turn up for what they thought was going to be uncontested free loot, but ended up being a bit of a biff, but the Spanish held easily. The French had a go at Caracas. Now, again, I'm afraid I've searched high and low. I've asked a couple of folks, and I've really got no intel as to whether or not this one happened, so I'm afraid we have to spin that away. Sorry about that. The Pirates, now, I think the Pirates had maybe 2 goes, or at least, no, they had 1 go at Les Cays where they pretty much got flattened. I think it was something like 1,000 points to 80 or something like that at Les Cays. It was a simple defence for the French. The Brits had their weekly go down here at Trinidad. And this was an interesting one because I'm going to talk about this just for a little moment. This involved a lot of players, probably 80 aside if we include the screening fleets. It was at a sort of standalone time. There was nothing else going on the server. These other things weren't happening concurrently. And so there was a lot of screening action. Now, as you've heard in my previous commentaries, I'm a big fan of screening. I think screening's a great part of the game. I know in the forums, the devs have mentioned the fact that they might look at sort of replicating the way the PvP events work in screening actions, and essentially when a port battle happens there'll be a zone outside where you'll be able to earn PvP style rewards for being part of the screening, and I really hope that comes to fruition. I'm a huge fan of screening. However, I do think the new ROE, rules of engagement, is a bit wobbly at the moment, and it's kind of breaking screening a little bit. And I'll try and demonstrate to you what I mean. So first of all, well done to the French and their Swede allies and the Danes, and if there were any Spanish who turned up. And I know the British had lots of Dutch and Americans, so it was a good bit of biffo, and there was 3 significant engagements going on in the screening, which stopped the British fleet getting on. And then after it, there was a good 50 or 60 ships trying to raise hostility. The French, buoyed by their defence, were trying to raise hostility with the Swedes around Castries and the Windward Islands. And I know for a fact at one point there was 4 significant engagements going on concurrently. So there's lots of great PvP. I think the French at one stage had Castries up to 80% before it was satiated by the British. Now, to be honest, the Brits probably would have let one of these ports flip, but because 2 were being flipped at the same time, they wanted the Allied defence didn't want to have to defend 2 ports concurrently, so they actually worked quite hard to shut them down. Now let's get back to the rules of engagement and the screening. So this is the map of the Castries region, the Castries port, I should say, which was attacked by the Brits. And so you'll see here, these are the 3 capture circles. So this is the once you've managed to enter. But I've just positioned, this is where the French fleet would be on open world, and they'd probably be trying to push to the end part of their circle here. This is where the British fleet would be looking to enter, assuming the wind's sort of in this direction-ish. They'd obviously be trying to enter over here. That was the previous week where the wind was blowing in this way. That was a much harder chore. And the screening fleets here, we see the French allies turning up to intercept, and the British attack counter-screening fleet coming in ahead in order to try and take these screeners out. And of course, you know, there's a tagging circle, and you always make sure you don't eat your primary fleet, be you defending or attacking. The problem is, so this is actually the size of the outer circle on the open world. So here's where the French fleet are as they exit the fort. This is where the British are at the closest they can get to the circle in order to enter. And this is the size of the tagging circle. So right now, if a tag in this inner circle takes place, the BR of the French port, as it decamps port and gets ready to enter the battle proper, is counted along with all the screeners, and the BR of the British fleet is counted. So this is, you know, this is 3 postcodes. Now the other thing, of course, at the moment is that it's the rule is that if you have 20% in the tagging fleet of the BR of the battle rating of the being tagged fleet, you will initiate combat. So basically, if your opposing fleet has 100 BR, you only need to have 20 BR in order to instigate combat. Now they've jiggled around recently with the BR of 1st and 4th rates. Now what this means is that one Agamemnon or Ingermanland or Constitution can tag 2 victories, right? Or if you take a full fleet of 25 line ships, so 25 victories or Santis or Oceans, all you need to do to fully engage that entire fleet and kick off a battle is have the equivalent BR of 10 4th rates. So imagine 10 frigates trying to take on the entire Trafalgar fleet. So again, please remember, I am positive for screening. I think screening is a great part of the game. I do think at the moment that the rules of engagement with the jumbo circle, which, and this is just happens to be Castries, but I could do this off Wilmington or any of these areas, is basically bigger than the port battle joining area. This breaks screening. Chuck in the recent changes they've made to BR, where fundamentally a 4th rate is is close to half the BR of a first rate, and the fact that you still only need a fifth of the BR to start an engagement, and I think it needs tweaking. I'll be interested to hear your thoughts. Now, I do not want a lobby system. I just think we need to fix the size of the outer engagement circle. So I know this is a big problem for pirates and a big problem with all the AI fleets that are kicking around. Now, there's lots of alternatives. We could rebalance the BR of first rates, make them a bit higher. But that would probably mean you need to do the same between fourths and shallows. You could reduce the size of this redonky-donk circle so that you're not pulling, 3/4 of the Caribbean whenever you do a tag. You could make it so if you're in the outer circle, it's optional as to whether or not you join the engagement. Because equally, I know situations where the taggers are very close to their opponents, and someone in this outer circle, they might be halfway into this outer circle, but when they get into the instanced PvP waters, they're 20 minutes sail to catch up with the battle, which is pretty meh. And so at the moment, I honestly believe the ROE in general is broken with the BR tolerances, and I believe the outer circle is just stupid. Basically, it's just too big, not just for port battle screening, but for tagging traders. If you're at somewhere like Little River and you pull a tag off 2 minutes north sail of Little River, you're actually pulling in all of Wilmington and all of Little River. Now that's a very busy sailing route, and it's just too big, especially along the coastline. Maybe it could be different in open water, but especially along the coastline where all the fortifications are and where you tend to get, high traffic as far as the AI fleets are concerned. Anyhow, let's get stuck back into some of the exciting action. Now, if you recall, there was a bit of controversy last week as the Danes who'd sued for a truce during their Orthodox seasonal festivities had then, in the eyes of the partners in the truce, fundamentally the US, had then sent an attack with their allies on Wilmington, one of the little islands around here, and from memory, A's, I think. And then the Americans and the Danes sat down in an attempt to reach an agreement. The agreement was very much oriented around the US not being able to generate hostility outside of the Danish prime time, or the Russian prime time, to be honest. And the US turned this down. So the US, to some extent, have been wreaking vengeance for what they see as this betrayal of the truce. And so already 2, maybe 3 times this week, the Americans have generated hostility in Savannah, which is a very important port for the Danes. It's where their live oak is farmed. Now, I say very important. I would imagine the Danes have literally got millions of live oak logs. But it's still strategically important. But this has actually been a bit of a troll, because then the Americans haven't been turning up. So the poor old Danes are waking up at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning in order to defend their precious port, only for the Americans to send like four folks in Reneways or something hilarious. And there's a bit to be said about this. So first of all, to some extent, Danes, you reap what you sow. You haven't exactly showered yourself in love and adoration as far as your opponents are concerned in how you've behaved in the truce and potentially in some other scenarios. And the Americans are annoyed at you. I do have a bit of sympathy, however, with being trolled at 3 o'clock in the morning 2 or 3 times a week. And this is one of the tyrannies of the game. It's got US on the map, and it's got European countries on the map, and there's an 8-hour time shift. So if you're France or Spain or Sweden, and you predominantly live in France or Spain and Sweden, There's a 2 to 4 hour playing window, and then on American prime time, it's stupid o'clock in the morning. Now, of course, the contrary to that is that every attack on an American port is at stupid o'clock for them as well. So, is the game broke? Do we need strict time zone servers, an oceanic server, a European server, a US server? Well, I have to say yes and no. I think when you have a peak playing number of 400 to 500 captains, this is really an exaggerated problem. But if you imagine that we peaked around 1500 and we probably had 6,000 active players on the server, then I reckon every time slot an alliance would have enough to defend. I know when the Brits hit Merida, or whatever it's called here, the north of Salam, I think it is, on the north of the Yucatan. This was in what I would call Aussie or Oceanic prime time, which means it's the middle of the day in Spain or whatever, and yet there was 25 ships here. All right, there was 25 ships here defending. And I know from when the Oceanic time zone was very busy in the war that ran from Black River all the way up to New Orleans, that the Spanish would have enough friends and allies to put up a defence all along the coast here, and it was only when people got bored with the game that fell away. So is there a time zone flipping problem? Yes. Is it very annoying if you live and fight in a nation that's predominantly only got coverage in one time zone? Yes, of course it is. It's essentially broken. It's it's like Ark Survival or something, where you build something lovely during the day and you go to bed and someone destroys it. It's a scourge of a 24/7 game with a small player base. So to some extent we have to hope the player base gets bigger. At the moment, it would be even worse if they broke the server up into 3 strict time zones. There'd be no fun at all for those in the US, stuff all fun at all for those of us down here in the Oceanic time zone, and a bit of fun in a 2 to 4 hour window for the Europeans. So I think we just have to wear it at the moment, and what I strongly recommend, and I said this 10 or 12 videos ago, is if you're the French, if you're the Spanish, if you're the Swedes, if you're the Danes, you really need to be recruiting people in other time zones into your nationality. I know the Dutch probably suffer the same, but I know that the Americans, they actually have a reasonably wide audience of people, but they have a small player base on this server because of ping. The British are the best blessed with having a real mixture of players from all over the time zone world. An Aussie base and a European base and a US base. And really we want every nation to have that broader stand. So I think for the time being, you've just got to wear it. I think for the time being, we need to wait to see how the game flushes out with subsequent patches. It's been very quiet, of course. The devs have been on holiday getting drunk. So we've got no idea what's coming in the next patch. There's all sorts of talk about raids and shipbuilding, and really we haven't got a clue what's coming in the next patch. I hope at very least there's some tweaking to the ROE. Okay, so the trolls haven't actually made real on their attacks here. Now, the next one I want to talk about is the battle between the Swedes and the pirates at Port-au-Prince. I've mentioned this before, but I'll mention it again. In the forums, in the Nations forum, so let me just drag it across here. In the forums, but the Games Labs forums, there's a thing called Good Fights, Battle, PvP, PB, video reports, and you'll see lots of good folks put in battles. You'll get 2 or 3 views of the same battle. So here's Castries from a Brit perspective, here's Castries from a dirty French perspective. This guy's very good actually at how he manages to hit map and tab a lot. Here's a bit of PvP biffo from yours truly. Here's is a Russian view on Les K's, and so on and so forth. You'll see there's lots of different videos of all the different battles that happen during a week, and some of these are spectacular. There's some from PvP2 as well. That caused me to make a wrong report last week, where I was so excited watching this battle I had to report on it, and then realised it was PvP2. But honestly, get onto the forums at Games Labs, and even if you're only a lurker, if you've got an hour at lunchtime and you want something to watch, this is better than some stupid reality TV show. So the Swedes went in against the Pirates. It was a real strategic battle. There was fights going on in multiple circles at the same time, and both sides were trying to work out how many forces to commit to either side. Then the Swedes very, very deliberately, and this was in the main brawl, if you like, in the centre circle, where perhaps it was 15 on 15 and there was 5 or 6 in the upper circle and 3 or 4 in the lower circle. The Swedes, quite early on in the engagement, sailed a fire ship right into the heart of the pirate fleet as the pirate fleet was sailing towards them into the wind. Now, because he was gold fire ship modded and very intended to blow up, after catching fire he exploded quite quickly. That's how the fire ship mod works. And he pretty much crippled 5 pirate ships this is a 4th rate battle, and he took their crews down to sort of 300 and something or 200 or something. He knocked off the masts from 5 ships. He caught a couple of his mates in it too. But the Swedes had come well prepared, and it was a good plan. They sent in the fire ship, and then they sent in the capping ships, and the capping ships then started eating up the pirate ships that had been caught in the explosion and were down on crew. And this caused a cascade in this circle. And it still took them, the pirates still defended vigorously, but after about 15 minutes post-fire ship, they'd lost this central biffo, this sort of 15-ish on 15-ish. And then the Swedes could start sending some of their extra ships off into the other circles to start putting extra weight onto their side in those other circles. And this ended up, and again, the pirates did all the right things in their defence, but it ended up being, by all accounts, a relatively comfortable win. It wasn't an easy win, but it was a relatively comfortable win for the Swedes. So I haven't got my numbers written down here, but something in the order of there's been 45 battles in the new port battle system. There's been 7 or 6 wins on PvP1 by the attacking force. So it's actually harder to win now than it was under the 3 towers. Now, we probably still haven't got enough data in, because we are still learning about how important the wind is. And of course, some of the different ports have different configurations. So Wilmington is a crazy bonkers. Let me just see if I can find the Wilmington. Here we go. Look at this. This is bazookas, this. Let me just bring up the Wilmington. This is the port defence for Wilmington. So you can see here, you could enter over here and leave yourself having to sail around a dogleg. But if you're the defending force, you're going to be able to start with 1 ship in this zone here and the rest of your fleet here. So you start with 2 circles. Now imagine if the wind was blowing in this direction, so that your opponents are sailing into the wind to get in here. And there's now there's no forts to worry about. They would give you a little red circle. There's no forts to worry about. But imagine if you could literally set up a line of ships, even here, a line of ships, and pew their sails as they come in, stick a mortar brig here, and nobble their first rates as they come in. You could set your front line up with a couple of ships boarding modded, so when they do arrive at 4 knots because they've got stuff all sails left, you could even eat them up, run off a stern rake, have 2 lines of defence just to play the clock off them. It only takes 41 minutes to to win a port battle if you hold 2-to-1 circle disparity. So you see, this is Wilmington. So you can imagine with Wilmington, it's going to take quite a few goes for the attacker to get favourite wind. And so, you know, the devs have published all these different pictures for us. And a lot of them are very different. St. John's is another good example where defending these two circles, you could imagine, is quite straightforward. But getting defence over here, disaster bastards. And there's like 2 fortifications that they can nobble to raise points off your fortifications. So you can see St. John's is a bit, you know, it's a bit tricky. And, you know, like I say, all these different ports have quite different layouts. New Ivatos is another one that's a little bit like Wilmington. Except there's a couple of different entrances to get into this stack. But look at the fort coverage. I actually think the fort coverage should be improved in all the ports. And then using raids, I've said this last week, using raids you can reduce its efficacy. So well done, Sweden. That was a fantastic... And that, to be honest, the video for that was the best port battle video I've seen. The pirates fought tooth and nail. They did all the right things. This fire ship twinned with their capping protocol and some nice management of their ships in the other circles led to what was in the end quite a strong victory for the Swedes. And it was the best port battle I'd ever seen in the new system. That was until the Americans went back at Islamabad, or Islamabad, as perhaps some more PC people like to say. So the Americans took Islamabad in what I think was the first successful port capture about 4 weeks ago, after a failed attempt, if I recall correctly. The Spanish took it back, I think on the first attempt, in an excellent port battle. And now the Americans came back in, and this was the most even port battle I've seen. The wind was against the Americans for the first 20 minutes or so, or certainly meant that they could only contest one circle. And then the big brawl started, as often does in the central circle. So again, if I just try and bring up Islamabad for you, if I can master my alphabet. Here she is. So the US came in, I can't remember if it was from this side or this side. They came in and they captured this circle, but the wind wasn't too good. It took them a while to engage over here. The Spanish came out to engage them. Their mortar brig got killed by a Spanish hunter. I think the Americans might have come in this way, and the mortar brig came in this way. And it got killed by a Spanish hunter, so it never took advantage of killing the fortifications, which would have been extra points for the US. The battle raged on and on and on, and with about 30 minutes to go, I think the US was 600 points away from a victory. Now, what's very interesting, and I really implore you to watch this battle because it's fantastic, it's great TV, as they say. And it's great to listen to the command, the US command. The guy does the video, is running the show. It's quite funny because you see him in the map as often as a commander should be, and because of that you see him ramming people left, right and centre. I have great empathy. It takes the I can barely walk and talk. So commanding, fighting and sailing is well hard. Probably about half an hour to go, they were probably good 600 points off a win, which basically means they had to sink ships and hold 2 circles, or get 3 circles really quickly. 21 minutes, I think, is the timing if you hold all 3 circles to rack up enough points. And there was quite a few folks on the US side who were a bit doom and gloom, and the battle fleet commander actually said, look, we're doing really well in this, guys, we're actually doing really well in this port battle, because he was taking the time to click around the map and just see how many of his opponents were in trouble as far as they'd lost one side or nearly lost one side. And what he was realising was that the defending fleet that had been stuck into this brawl was actually really battered. And the US had taken one circle, and the wind had come in their favour that they could get ships to the third circle should they need to. And the brawl went on, and the US slowly whittled down the Spanish defences. And I am not making this up. I'm not exaggerating. The Americans won the battle with 1.2 seconds left on the clock. It made a James Bond bomb defusal look slack. And so the Spanish were defeated quite literally at the last tick of the clock. And hats off to everybody that was involved in that. And I remember under the old port battle system seeing things down to the last 15 seconds where someone was trying to board a tower. But that acceleration as they started sinking Spanish ships, that moment where they finally managed to capture the third circle by releasing ships from the centre, was an absolute cracker. Now, if that wasn't enough for a great week in naval action, where we've had probably the best two port battles we've seen, we've had some great defences, we've had some top screening, we've had some shenanigans and trolling. I don't know what happened on Sunday. I don't know if it was National Grumpy Arse Day, but every man and his dog decided that they wanted to raise some hostility. So tomorrow, on the day of recording this, there are battles set for Savannah, could be a troll, on the north side of the Spanish capital, in Bacalar, at Salamanca, which is going to be an interesting port battle because getting in there is hard as buggery. The pirates are coming back. The pirates are also, I think it's the pirates are also hitting the Danes in the north. The Cloggies are giving the Spanish another go down here. The Cloggies are also having a go at Pampatar. And the French have boiled up against the British at the Windward Islands and at Trinidad. So a double hit on the British here. The fights actually, although they're all on the same day, most nations will have to run two shifts. There seems to be sort of two distinct time slices. They're a disaster for me because it's like 4 o'clock in the morning on a work day, so probably not. And then 8 o'clock in the morning on a work day, so that's probably too late for me to hang around. So I'm going to have to watch vicariously at work through Twitch. So Twitch it, you bastards. But yeah, there's 8 scheduled biffs all across the board. Pretty much every nation's involved or threatens to be involved. Spanish is an interesting one because they're getting hit by the US, the Brits and the Cloggies. Now I know this wasn't a coordinated effort. Bacalar had been running up and really no one had bothered to put it down and it just got flipped over. The Americans, I know, are looking to push out of Islamabad, and the Cloggies have been coming here once a week anyway. So it's on for young and old. Haiti's kicked off. So Haiti was quiet in the previous war. Haiti was a real busy spot, but Haiti's really kicked off. Now we're seeing some action on the main island itself. And the Frenchies, it's actually, I think it's the Swedes who've kicked up the Windward Islands and the Frenchies who kicked up Castries, or vice versa. So the Brits are getting double thumped over here. The Cloggies have gone for it. So it's on for young and old. The pirates are back in it. It's on for young and old. So hopefully next week's will be a cracking letter, Your Majesty. Now there's a bit of a correction from last week. I forgot to add in the Swedish ports. So the Swedes actually didn't take 12 ports this week. This is ports I missed from last week. Which gives the Swedes a bit of an upswing, and half of that is ports I've missed. It also hits the Spanish a bit harder than has genuinely happened this week. The US are up a bit, which also hurts Spain, and the pirates, of course, lost Port-au-Prince. Now the interesting thing is the Spanish now have lost almost half their ports since the reset. And really, other than Islamabad, they've not been aggressively retaking anywhere. But I am beginning to see numbers around, and actually that's a general truth. I'm beginning to see people returning to the game who've been out for a while. I don't know if that will persist, but it's good news. Welcome back. I look forward to seeing our numbers engorge. And that is it. Oh, I've left me stupid. Look at that. I've got my wrong sign off. I'll get rid of Christmas. There we go. That's it for this week's naval action. I think it's been a cracking week. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. And I will see you on the oceans, and I will catch you.